All right, let's start. Hi, guys. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining Akto's webinar. This is a very special webinar for us since it's about our feature launch and a very special feature launch. And you'll know why it's special in a few minutes. Firstly, thanks a lot for joining. I know for some of you it's late at night. For some of you it's in between the meetings, etc. But I assure you, you will really enjoy this. You will love what we are going to present over here. Let's start. It's going to be about like a 30 to 40 minutes webinar, depending on how many questions we get. There's going to be a live demo at the end. There's going to be Q&A, but a little bit of introduction in the beginning. Challenges that we face in API discovery, since the webinar is all about API discovery, and the solution that Akto has. So that's the quick look at the agenda. Some housekeeping items, guys. Chat with us, engage as much as possible, ask questions during the webinar. Our team is going to answer as much as possible. If we can't answer, we will email you back the answers after the webinar, just in case the time doesn't permit or anything. Also, awesome. So I think about like 27-ish participants. I'm expecting more. There are about 100 registrations for the webinar. So yeah, please make this an engaging session. All right. So presenters here, this is me, Ankita. I'm the founder and CEO of Akto. I lead Akto's product vision, marketing, and sales. Akto is an API security platform. It started 2.5 years ago with the vision to secure APIs for every application in every organization possible. With me is my co-founder, Ankush. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hello everyone, this is Ankush here, co-founder and CTO at Akto. And yeah, very excited to present this to all of you. The team has worked very hard to make this possible and make it available to you all. So let's go.
Awesome. Super excited. Okay, before we talk about what Acto code is, let's talk about very briefly what Acto is for some of the participants. I guess we've done a good job that most people know about Acto, but let me tell you what it is. We are the best platform for modern AppSec teams to build an enterprise-grade API security program throughout the DevSecOps pipeline. And throughout the DevSecOps pipeline, this thing will become more clear as we go into the presentation, what we mean by that. We serve 1,000 plus AppSec teams. Some of those are big banks, Fortune 500 companies. Our partners, our investors include Axel, Alumni Ventures, Angels are Tenable founder, Notion, Sentry, all of these people, really the industry veterans. This year, Akto was recognized by Gartner as one of the representative vendor in the Gartner Market Guide for API Protection. Gartner also mentioned Akto in 2 of its hype cycles. One is for the application security hype cycle, and the other one is the hype cycle for APIs, which is a very proud thing for us, because Akto is probably the youngest startup to be there in Gartner's API security report, which means we are doing a lot of right things when it comes to especially product and GTM. All right, so now is the moment for Akto code. This, guys, is a really proud moment for us, because Akto started with the vision to secure APIs throughout the DevSecOps pipeline. We till now had covered all the environment, staging, dev, production, everything. But what we didn't cover was code. And now we are launching something in code, which is a very exciting moment for us. We've seen a lot of demand for it. We've seen people asking queries about how Akto can secure APIs in code. And this is our first step to it. And this is not the last step. There is going to be a lot more happening with Akto code. So yeah, so I'll talk about what it is. But before that, some context into API discovery. Maybe some of you guys already know about these things, but I'll briefly touch on this so that the audience understand the reason why we are doing what we are doing. So number one challenge in securing APIs is API discovery. This is coming from the 30 plus conversations I have with the AppSec teams every week. Um, they don't say, I mean, yeah, API security testing and API security vulnerabilities are of course the end goal to secure APIs, but the beginning, the life of API security really starts with API discovery. And why so? What are the real challenges in those in this area? So number one, shadow APIs. APIs which are unknown to security teams. They are not documented. Since they are not documented, they miss security reviews and hence has high potential for attackers to attack. Zombie APIs. Zombie APIs are the APIs which are still active but are supposed to be deprecated. One example of that is like imagine API slash V1, API slash V2. These are old version of APIs while the dev is already at API slash V10. Uh, these old version of APIs should have been deprecated ideally, but they've not been deprecated, which means they're also not part of your regular security assessments and have and can be easily exploited if are unsecured. The third is it's sort of a subset of shadow APIs, uh, but imagine devs, and this I hear so much from all my customers. Devs deploy APIs without security approval, which they will, right? Like they want to they want to build an application, they want to test something, they will deploy an API. But the thing that's happening is that's not going via the security review, because of which those APIs get exposed, those APIs are part of the API discovery problem and really the problem that we are dealing with today. The last one is now this is something I think every organization I talk to is trying to do. They they have Swagger files. Everyone has Swagger files. Everyone has Open API spec file. Everyone has Postman collection. Now, what's the problem then? Why are we talking about API discovery if they have API documentation? Well, all those Swagger files, Open API spec file, Postman collection, they are manually updated by developers. They are almost always incomplete. They are outdated. Imagine in a week, a developer is adding minimum of 10 new APIs or changing 10 other old APIs. That does not make it into the API documentation. It makes it into the API documentation when it's really required. So yes, most of the companies have API documentation, but those will have like only 10% of the APIs, of the actual number of APIs. So these are the real challenges of API discovery. And yeah, let's talk about how Akto can solve for it. Okay, so API discovery in the DevSecOps pipeline, and I keep saying DevSecOps pipeline because Akto is truly doing that. It is the only platform in the market who's covering the DevSecOps pipeline. So today, Akto does staging, production. It has 40 plus traffic connectors, which you can use to discover APIs from the traffic. It listens to the traffic and get all the APIs. There are connectors like eBPF, daemon set, gateways, there's Nginx, all of those things. There's cloud connector, there's on-prem connector. What has changed now is we are now in code. So what that means is we don't just get APIs from the staging and production, we get it from code as well, which means, which means we are covering the entire DevSecOps pipeline. This is from code to production, really code to runtime API security. And that's what I mean by covering the entire DevSecOps pipeline, which means, let's say if we get APIs from staging and production, there might be some APIs which are not getting traffic, which can now be covered through code. And you will see some of these examples as we go further in the presentation. I'll just take a quick pause and see if there's anyone who's written any chat or question. No? Okay. Guys, feel free to ask any question. Happy to answer any of those things. Okay, so you're talking about this. Why is it a game-changing feature? Why what will this feature do? How will the life change? Okay, I'll talk about the life today, like before using Acto, and then I'll talk about how it will be after using Acto for the with this feature. So today, security teams are relying heavily on developers to manually update and maintain API documentation. We all know this. The second is there's complete lack of API inventory, of course, blind spots, shadow APIs, zombie APIs. We already talked about it. Manual documentation, which remains out of sync because the actual code base has changed. It will keep on changing, but it's very hard to keep the manual documentation updated. Um, the last one is, and it's a very important one. The reason we keep talking about documentation and API discoveries, the real reason is actually security assessments, security testing. We need to know all our APIs and get visibility into the APIs because at the end of the day, we need to secure them. We need to test them against vulnerabilities. We need to know if those APIs are secure or not. And so this is a very big point wherein today, because I don't have APIs, I lack API inventory. I have I have low coverage of security testing. I can only test 100 APIs while my application has 1,000 APIs, which means my application is can only be 10% secure. It cannot be 100% secure. So that is the problem we are dealing with, and this is the before picture. How is it going to change? It's going to change because now if you use Acto, you get real-time visibility into the APIs from the source code to runtime. So the real thing is, guys, it's not just code or runtime, it is source code to runtime. You always will have updated API inventory. You do not have to go to the devs or API teams to get a complete list of APIs. Your changes, so if an API is changing, those are automatically detected. It will not be detected 1 week later, 1 month later, nothing like that. It will get detected in an automated way. So if you see there is a new parameter getting added, there is some security flaw in that API that's newly added, respond to it immediately. You don't have to wait for a month for the API documentation to come in. And the biggest thing, of course, is you can now do deep security testing with highest coverage possible because now you don't have just the 100 API endpoints that you get documentation for. You have the complete coverage. You have 100% coverage, not 10% coverage. I think there's some question here. Yeah, Ankush, maybe I guess you're taking it. Okay, so
Yeah.
all right. So what's happening in the market? Do you have other tools who do it, and how are they different? Uh, Definitely, there are vendors who are trying to tackle this problem because it's a huge problem. There are legacy vendors, there are new vendors, there are all sorts of vendors who are trying to solve this problem. But what is the lay of land? What is the market doing today? Most of these vendors either lack context or they lack APIs coverage, and I'll tell you how. The vendors who are getting APIs from code, by the way, there are very few vendors who are getting APIs from code. The vendors who are doing that, they're only focusing on code. They don't have the runtime context. What that means is they don't know if any API is exposed to internet or not. They just have an inventory of APIs. They don't know how your APIs are behaving dynamically. So there might be a case that they find vulnerability in an API, but that's probably not exploitable because um, that platform doesn't have the runtime context. So it's only code centric, which lacks context. The second is incomplete inventory. So most of the vendors who are doing code centric API discovery, they lack a very big thing, which I think everyone as a buyer should ask this question that when you say API inventory, do you only mean URLs or do you mean the complete schema? Because what we have seen in the market, most of the platforms out there, they are only producing URLs. They're not able to get the complete schema because, to be honest, it's very, very hard to build the tech behind it, getting complete schema, which is why most of the vendors are only getting URLs. Limited capability. When I say that, what I mean is most of these most of the platforms out there, they're trying to find Swagger file in the code. They're not really extracting the URLs that they find in the code. They're finding only the Swagger file. And some of them are using open source tools such as SemGrep, which are code analysis tools, to get the API inventory. Now, the problem with using open source tools to do that is you will be limited by the capability that tool has. So if the tool is not able to do deeper stuff which is needed for API security, uh, that platform will be limited by it, which is something that Akto doesn't do. Akto has everything built in-house. We don't rely on open source tools or other code analysis tool or other open source traffic connectors um, uh, to do any of the API discovery, API security testing, or API vulnerability detection. Everything is built in-house. What that helps us with is there is a lot of flexibility. There is deep tech built to do everything very specific to APIs. Yeah. I think there's a question from Michael. Yes, Michael. Do you want to chat? Do you want to type your question in Q&A? Okay. Yeah, Ankush, maybe you can take this. All right. So I think I have a question of Ankush, which is Ankush, there are Swagger libraries in code, right? Which can be used for automated API discovery. Why don't developers use this? Why is it not a good way? Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think my slide, I mean, you guys can clearly see I prepared the slide. Um, but yeah, there are a few like strong pointers when it comes to scaling automated Swagger generation. I mean, from the perspective of a security team, they will have to go to the dev teams or their engineering managers to convince them to put a third-party dependency in their code to add automated Swagger generation libraries in their code. Then they will have to go and request a DevOps team to make it a mandatory step to generate the Swagger file in the CI/CD pipeline. Uh, and then lastly, typically all these Swagger generation libraries, they host their APIs under a certain URL. So yeah, they will have to also talk to the infra team to make those URLs available internally. Uh, and of course, I mean, the story doesn't end there. You send a lot of automation to find out if any API schema has changed or if any security related headers like auth headers have changed in the APIs. All of that onus of uh, automating it is on you. Now think about this is not just one team you're talking. This is like around 1,000 microservices you're talking about, and this means you have to align like several dev teams with this objective. And imagine a new team comes up or a new service comes up. How will you ensure that the same protocol is being followed with the new team or the new repository as well? So a lot of scaling challenges over here. I mean, it's very hard to get this right at scale, and that's the one big problem with Swagger generation that we have. Apart from all these process kind of issues, of course there are I mean, you have to inject real code. You can't do it in real time. Your code should compile. All of these extra restrictions are also there. Um, you can only see changes that happen in schema. If a functional change happens, if someone removes or someone adds some logic to an API call, there is really no way to know about it. So I mean, Swagger gives very limited view of the APIs in every change or in every pull request.
Correct. Yeah. So, yeah, net basically, Ankush, what you mean is it's very hard to use Swagger libraries because at the end of the day, it's a lot of work. It's still a lot of work
Yeah.
to get API inventory, right? Yeah. So, how does Acto really solve for this problem?
Yeah, so now Akto can actually read your source code and understand your APIs from that. I mean, by APIs, I don't mean just the API paths. I also mean the method, the schema, what kind of payload parameters are expected for the API call, what kind of response parameters come out. All of those things Akto can now find out just by reading the source code. So now that brings a real power. You don't have to talk to dev teams at all. As long as you have access to source code, you are through. You don't have to talk to DevOps or infra team at all. You can just supply us with your source code repository, and that's it. We'll do everything for you. We'll also notify you of any API changes or any new APIs introduced. All of this is now automated. The best thing is you got one repository for the organization, just supply us that, and we'll find out APIs from all the 1,000 repositories that you have, all the multiple branches you have in those repositories. Everything is there now at your fingertips.
Correct. So Ankush, what you're saying is it can scale to 1,000 plus repos. It can scale to as many branches as possible. It doesn't really matter, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Awesome. That's pretty incredible, right? What you couldn't do with the Swagger library is now possible with Acto. Of course, I'll show you with the demo also. Okay, so what I think there is a question over here. Yeah, what languages are supported? We can write it and it's going to come in the slide as well. How you define context. And this is how we define context. This will be answered in this slide. What we mean by context is Acto is not just giving you visibility from, as I said, only one place. It's not just code, it's not just API traffic. It is literally a combination of these two, which means code to runtime. So anything that we identify in code, anything that we identify in traffic, it sort of merges and gives real true positives with context. So Actor knows because it has a runtime context, if your APIs is exposed to internet or not. Acto knows if your public APIs are making database calls or not, because all of that context is coming from traffic. Now, that context is linked with the root cause in code. So if we find a vulnerability, that context will be traced back to the file path and the line of code. So that is what we mean by API traffic and code context, which significantly reduces the false positives and gives more contextual vulnerabilities. Like we don't just say, okay, this is a vulnerability, but we also say that, hey, there is a vulnerability. Your API is exposed to internet. It's actually exploitable. There's actually a MongoDB call happening. And here is a line of code, which you can go to and really fix the vulnerability. So it is really code to runtime complete coverage with full context. It's not just one place and no contextual vulnerability identification. So the other thing is also complete coverage. It's as I said before, code API traffic can give you most of the APIs, but maybe like 10-20% can be left because it's not coming in traffic. So that can be completed now with the code, with API discovery from code. I hope that answers the question. Yeah, so the languages Ankush has mentioned over here, I'm also going to mention. Yeah, so Ankush, why don't you give an example, how the context of both code and traffic will help? Can you give an example of that?
Yeah, definitely. So here, let's take a look at this slide. And to be honest, like this is a code snippet from Juice Shop. This is specifically the API endpoint where we try and edit a review. Now, just common sense, when you are implementing this review endpoint, only the author of the review should be able to edit its review. So let's look at the implementation over here. Now through testing, of course, Actor can find out that hey, there is an IDOR vulnerability uh, in this particular endpoint. Like again, exactly, any user can change any other user's review. Now this Actor found out through testing. But here is the thing, because now Actor can exactly link the API implementation to the source code, we also have the ability to go through the source code and to understand, hey, you did a good job. You at least authenticated the user. So only a legit user of the platform can edit a review. But hey, you failed to implement another check that the editor user ID should be the same as the author user ID. And that is something now we can correlate with. So this is the exact part that comes with code and runtime correlation. We can now understand if an API call comes in this function, exactly how will it be manipulated and how will all the steps be executed.
Awesome. Yeah. So really what it gives is huge context to the security team. It's not just giving blind vulnerability, but it's really telling what's happening in the code. Why is it a vulnerability? What steps you can take to fix it, right? So that's what we mean by code to runtime context. Okay. Bit of visualization of how it works. I'm only talking about API discovery from code over here. Uh, you input your code. This is your code coming from GitHub, GitLab, Azure DevOps, any of the SCM tools, Bitbucket. Um, Akto will extract all the APIs. So these are the API endpoints Akto will extract. All the param names, all of these API endpoints, the schema will be exported in a Swagger file. So the whole pipeline is like code to APIs to Swagger file. This is sort of the visualization to keep in mind, and that's how you generate your API documentation, Open API spec file in just a matter of minutes. All right. In terms of scale, about for the source code, it's about 20,000 APIs we have tested on, files about 50,000. And how much time does it take? For 5,000 APIs, it can take about 3.5 minutes. Now, these are the numbers that we are going to probably double in next 30 days. That's the idea. That's the scale that we want to reach. And in terms of languages, somebody asked this question. So these are the languages that we cover: Node.js, Python, Go, Java. Upcoming is C#. In terms of SCM tools, we currently cover GitHub, GitLab, GitHub, and Bitbucket. Upcoming are AWS Code Commit and Azure DevOps for SCMs. Just to let you know, we cover all of these for the CI/CD testing. I'm just talking about the APIs from source code over here. Okay, so bigger picture. Bigger picture is Acto is the platform to discover your APIs in an automated way. And we already have these 40 plus really amazing traffic connectors, which could be Kubernetes connectors, eBPF, AWS services, Azure services, API gateways, SDKs, mirroring, TCP dump, agents. All of these are Acto's native traffic connectors. We have built these over a period of 2 years. What's changed is now we have a universe of source code connectors. So you don't just get traffic connectors, but you also get source code connectors with Acto, and this makes it like a repository of about 50 plus API discovery connectors. All right. We are moving towards the demo. This is my favorite part. I'll just share the demo screen now. Give me just a moment, guys. Yeah. So I have to figure out how to share the whole screen. I hope you can see my screen. Ankush, maybe you can tell me, can you see the blog application?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, so guys, this is a Spring Boot REST API that we are going to use for the demo purposes. And can you see the Acto demo account? Okay, great.
Yes, I can. Okay.
Yeah, so this is our demo account. This is API collections, and all of these are APIs by host name, groups, custom, all of that. What I'm going to do is in the quick start, I have a lot of traffic connectors, as I showed you, traffic connectors and source code connectors. I'm going to go to the source code connector here. Okay, it has GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket, as I said. I'm going to click on connect on GitHub. And you can see I can input organization name and repository name. So I will go to blog application Spring Boot, and the organization name is actually my my name, and the repository name is the blog application Spring Boot REST API 04. I am just going to save it now. If once I click on save, it will start discovering all the APIs. So I'm going to save it. And you can see I've done multiple repos over here 4 hours ago and all stuff like that. So this one is scheduled. It's running. While it's running, it will take maybe a minute or so. By the way, so right now we have about 12. Last one was, I think, discovered 4 hours ago. So here, as you see custom 12, you will see 13 in a minute or so. How about this, Ankush? While we are doing this, can you explain to us how what this API is and a little bit about it?
Yeah. Can you just search at the top, or actually, yeah, this file is open. So this is like one of the controller files. This is like typical Spring Boot implementation. You can see all the APIs, for example, line number 98. This one tries to get details of a single post, given its ID. The next line you can see line number 109, which is to delete a given post. And the APIs are implemented very nicely. You can see the return type as well. Post is the return type. The request, for example, line number 99, the request is just simply a number, post ID. So yeah, typical Spring Boot application. And I mean, just by looking at it, you can imagine how the API schema would look like. Of course, this includes, going into details of that post DTO class, figuring out its members. If the members are not primitive types, going one level deeper again and figuring out again further what are the member variables and so on and so forth. So Acto does all of that. Acto will process all the code files. This means Acto is processing not just this controller file, it's actually going to process your entire source code so that it can build up the type very, very accurately. And this is where the real magic lies. Uh, and yeah, of course, like that's all the crux of the hard work. That's all the output of the hard work. Um,
Got it.
yeah, let's.
So I'm probably going to, refresh and see if we have discovered a new API. We have. So can you see, guys? 1 minute ago, we just discovered 25 new API endpoints. This is the blog application Spring Boot REST API 4 that I ran the GitHub scan on. And these are all the API endpoints that Acto discovered. These are all discovered 1 minute ago. In fact, like all of these also have source location. So if I click on any of this, I can actually go into what line of code these APIs are coming from. So it's pretty cool. Now, the thing I really asked you guys was to ask to see if it's only generating URLs or it's generating params as well. So let me go into maybe one of these API endpoints, and you can see in the schema, I don't just see URL, I can actually see the payload. I can see the key names as well. Maybe let's take another example. You see, in the payload, I can actually see the param name. So it's pretty incredible. We are not just generating URLs, we are generating a complete schema that you can download as a Swagger file now. So here is also a download button. You can export it as OpenAPI spec file, Postman CSV, anything that you can do, you want to do, you can do over here. So just to summarize, what we did was we went to this GitHub repo. We copied the organization name and the repo name. We input this organization and repo name in the GitHub Connect over here. And we started discovering all the APIs in this API group. Everything was populated over here in just about a minute. All right, so that was the quick demo. The thing about this is I'm only doing it for a few APIs. You can, as I said, you can scale it for 20,000 APIs, 50,000 files. It doesn't matter. It works on GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket. So yeah, go ahead, try it out. Do you also, I think somebody has mentioned some of these frameworks. Ankush, you want to maybe answer those?
Yeah, I'm trying to answer.
Okay, so Now, the question is, how do we get access or discuss plan pricing for API discovery from source code? The answer to both our current customers and our potential people who are not our current customers today, please reach out to us on at akto.io/aktocode. This is a URL. You will come to the screen. You can fill out the form, and somebody from the team will reach out to you. Or you can email sales@akto.io. For our current customers, actually, they can reach out to us on the Slack group or whatever groups that we have. You can reach out to us via those groups. Actually, let me show you, sorry, what we have here. So this is the link. I'm going to put it in the chat as well. Akto.io/Akto code is the link to go to ask more about the query. I can give you a demo. We can get on a call to understand what your needs are. If you have any language or an SCM tool that we are not covering, happy to prioritize those depending on what the needs are exactly. But yeah, like make sure you do any one of these, and there'll definitely be somebody answering your query. Okay. We are, it's about 40 minutes. We have about 5 to 10 minutes for the Q&A. Guys, feel free to ask any question that you have. I will actually leave it over here so that you know where to go. Ask us any questions around API discovery, API security testing, anything. Happy to answer over here. Anything that you see is a miss, we can take it as a feature request. Please use this forum for that. We have some Q&A over here. For some reason, I'm not able to see Q&A. There's also a poll if you want to maybe take the poll. Ankush, are you able to see the Q&A?
Yes. I'm trying to answer.
Okay, I'm not able to see.
Quite a few open questions, and I'll answer all guys. Don't worry.
So maybe I think once if I stop sharing, maybe I can. Oh, yeah. So you analyze source code, but how do you maintain data integrity? Like a client, how can I provide you the source code? Yeah, so what you're asking is a data handling and integrity policy, which we have. I don't know your name, but if you want, we can send you across. Why don't you send an email? And we have all of those data handling policy. It's pretty standard. We've been taking traffic from enterprise environment. So we have all of those policies and arrangements in place. There is a question. Naveen to host. I'm talking about runtime code, which is absolutely nothing to do with. Okay. Yeah, there are very good questions. I think we should be answering. I think Ankush, we can also answer. I think while we speak, just so that everyone.
Okay, let's start. So, any plans to include Django? Definitely. I mean, Django is already supported. So, if you have Django API frameworks in your org, write to us. We can make it work for you.
There's a question around the business logic from Naveen.
Yeah, I'm on the Q&A screen. Are there any specific frameworks supported? Example, the slides of the language, but routes, verb parameters. Yeah, this is anonymous, but yeah, you asked the right question. We support for example, in Java, we'll support all the popular frameworks, Spring Boot, Struts. If you're using any other, let us know. For Node.js, Express, Goa, etc. If you're in Golang, then Mux, Gorilla, etc. So all of these, if you're in Python, then Django, Flask, of course, all the API frameworks are supported. We have tried to put as maximum coverage as possible. But yeah, if you have any queries, again, like do write to us, and we can then answer queries specifically. You don't have to tell us, at least while configuring, you don't have to configure what kind of repository it is. Akto can figure it out. So as long as it's one of the supported, popular frameworks, you should be good. Even if that framework is used by, let's say, 1% of the world, you should be good. We should be already covering that. So we have made sure we covered like a vast variety of frameworks already.
Yeah, one of the question is, can we detect vulnerabilities in the source code of API endpoints asking for SAST capabilities, or is it just discovery that's available? That's a very good question. Today, we have launched API discovery from source code, but you will see API vulnerabilities from the code from like every stage of DevSecOps pipeline. As I mentioned, our vision is to cover API security at every stage from everywhere possible. So if you're asking for SAST capabilities, definitely for APIs, you will know from code itself what all vulnerabilities are there. It's in the pipeline. It's going to be launched very soon.
Uh, yeah, I think you already answered about the data integrity
Yeah.
question.
The answer is it's HIPAA compliant. Is the feature HIPAA compliant? Yes. The platform is
Yes.
completely is HIPAA compliant. We are SOC 2, GDPR, ISO, and HIPAA compliant, just so that everyone knows. And there are data policies and everything that we share with our clients once we start the engagement. Yeah. I think there are questions on the chat, Ankush, webinar chat that you want to take.
Yeah. Mm. Is it just a discovery, or do we do inline testing as well? Yeah, of course. I mean, Akto is a complete API security platform, so we do not just discover the APIs, we also test them for it from a security perspective. So Akto covers all of OWASP top 10 and even more. Check it out, or talk to us, and we'll be happy to tell you more about the testing part. But yeah, like we do inline testing as well.
There's a question around business logic up there from Naveen.
Yeah, I think there is a trail of conversation. Yeah, so Naveen, I mean, your question is around API workflows. So let's say there is a workflow from API A to B to C, and then where B is supposed to be a mandatory step, but what if someone can bypass the second API and call API C directly? Of course, Acto covers these steps. I mean, Acto can understand what are the popular or important API workflows, and it can automatically create tests for you where it skips a certain API in between and calls the last API. So this is again part of workflow testing, which Akto does. To understand the API workflows, again, you can configure them, but Akto can also discover all the API workflows automatically. You should give it a try. I think that
Yeah.
answers all the remaining questions.
There was a question that I want to sort of talk about. Is API discovery reading possible for APIs that aren't onboarded to a management platform? AWS, GCP, Apigee, etc. Say the API is just deployed to a data center. So the answer to that is yes, definitely. We can read it from the Kubernetes cluster or VM where it is hosted. Yeah, it was Daniel who asked this question. I guess we've answered most. Guys, if you've not answered, definitely. How is it different from a Piro tool? Is the same or any different approach used? So I don't think Apiro does API security. It does have components of it where it integrates with certain API security tools. But Apiro is an ASPM tool. Siva Neswaran. It itself doesn't do API security if from what I know of the tool that I saw latest. By the way, the approach is very different. We have the kind of discovery, testing, and threat detection that we do in API security. I don't think Apiro does that. It integrates with other API security tool, and we are also sort of in the pipeline to integrate with them. All right. I hope we answered all the questions.
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. Okay, awesome. I think yeah, it's 45 minutes and we we've been able to answer the questions as well. So guys, thank you. Thank you so much for joining the webinar. The next step is, here is the link, acto.io/acto code. Go ahead, schedule a session. Somebody from the team will come up and explain to you how the product will work for your environment. Any question you have regarding the product, definitely reach out. And yeah, we will obviously, for all the attendees, we will send you the recording, we'll send you the Q&A, and we'll tell you what are the next steps. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining this webinar, guys. It's been a wonderful session. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.